Hey guys, Metal Jesus here, and I am in beautiful Southern California with my buddy Drunken Master Paul.
That's right. And who are you nice people?
Oh, everybody, this is, I'm Ken, and this is Roberta Williams, and we founded a company called Sierra Online.
Our old bosses!
Hey!
I know, it's like a
that's true.
reunion.
So excited to finally do this and hang out with you guys. We've been wanting to do it for a while. We're going to talk about games and the old days at Sierra and all the wonderful, weird times we had.
All right, let's take a look. All right, dude, I am so excited. I have a stack of classic Sierra games that I picked out of my collection to show you guys and, you know, kind of get your on-the-cuff memories of publishing and making some of these games. So I think it's going to be pretty cool. You guys ready?
Ready.
Ready?
Ready.
We'll start right out of the gate with
Okay.
with this one.
Yeah.
Well, that's the biggie.
There you go.
Yes.
That one's my favorite.
So Phantasmagoria, the
Yes.
original one.
Yes.
So many people come up to me and will mention when it comes to your games, it'll be King's Quest and Phantasmagoria.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those really are those.
Yeah.
Even though I did do about 20 games.
Oh, yeah.
But some of them a little more forgettable than others. Others did okay.
When it comes to Phantas, though, you know, you were blazing a trail when it comes to, you know, full motion video and stuff like that. I mean, that must have been super hard at the time.
It was.
Yeah.
Oh, totally. And I don't know that the process that we went by to do this game has ever been repeated since. Partially because it's not easy. It's really hard. And I don't know that it was completely understood how we did that or the process by creating something that's like movie-like, but yet still remains a game.
Right.
It's very tricky.
So when you were making it, it is very movie-like. What was that like? Were you shooting like a movie shoot out of order? Did you go in sequence? Because this was a 7 CD game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As we in tech support
Yes.
painfully knew.
Yeah.
Yes.
Before DVDs, it was
Yeah.
like epic, right?
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah, it was. Well, from a design standpoint, and then I know Ken can talk about the technical aspects of it. But from a design aspect, I mean, this was truly a story. I mean, this is the
Okay.
most story-like game that I actually worked on, and I loved it. But to take a story and make it into a game, it has to be broken up into pieces, of course.
Right.
And I wrote it as a script, 500 pages,
Like a movie script.
sort of.
Okay.
Sort of. But it was sort of written like a script. It was 500 pages. I think your average movie script is somewhere around 100
Yeah,
pages.
120.
120,
Wow.
150 maybe. So this was 500 pages. And the reason it was so many pages is because I also had to put in all the interactive aspects of it. I don't want to say we shot it like a movie because it's not exactly true. But we did have a Hollywood director who was directing the actors, because we had actors and he knew how to get the emotions out of them and that kind of thing. And obviously I wasn't experienced with that.
Yeah.
But I did sit right next to the director, right next to him, you know, and I was constantly going, you know, this is a game, you know, it's a game.
Focus on the
You know,
game.
Not a movie, it's a
let's
game.
not get too involved in our little vignettes here, and you know, let's make them smaller. And,
Yeah.
and I had to really say that all the time.
Yeah, it
all
seems
the
like
time.
quite a balancing act between
Yeah,
shooting a
yeah.
movie and shooting something that's interactive.
Yes,
Yeah.
and that was my job.
Especially at the time, too, when people maybe didn't understand exactly what that was to look like.
To
right?
look like.
Yeah.
Right. And everything was blue screen, and we took so much care to set up everything. I mean, if you notice, she's really living, the couple here, and all, everybody in it are living in a 3D computer renderized house and world.
Right.
Yeah.
And so they were actually interacting both with real things, but also the computer rendered things. So for instance, in the kitchen, the table, and they would sit in a chair. The chairs and the table was rendered. It wasn't really there. but yet they would have coffee cups, so they
Sure.
would have drinking their coffee.
Again, it's so. I think people today would
Have no idea how hard that was.
Yeah, I mean that was so ahead of its time.
Yeah, they take it for granted now.
Yeah,
everything's
because they've
easy.
seen DVD
They don't
making up
realize
stuff.
what was all behind
Yeah,
it.
this was a long time ago.
Yeah.
From a technical,
Technically,
some of the
Yeah.
stuff we did. Today's graphics cards, you can actually fly a camera in 3D and move it through the house. You couldn't do that then. There were they didn't have 3D graphics cards then. Even to create the graphics, I remember having to buy people these workstations that were like 30 grand a piece, and then they would take hours and hours to render. And it was always frustrating to me as kind of the money guy, I guess you'd call it, because you'd pay $30,000 for this thing. They'd render it out at this tremendous, beautiful resolution, but then they'd shrink it to 320 by 200,
Oh, sure, right.
like the crappiest
Yeah.
cell phone, in order to be able to fit it
To be
on.
able to
I mean,
do it
still
at all.
shipped on what, 6 CDs?
7, I think.
Seven.
Yeah, and but it's just so sad that nobody kept those original high-res images
I
and
know, I
the
would
high-res
love to
video
have them.
footage. And
Somebody
also,
may have them somewhere, but we don't know.
There's
we don't
so
know
many
who.
ex-Sierra employees out there in
Somebody
the Seattle
may
area.
have it, but they don't want to say.
Or just in a drawer somewhere and they just
Yeah,
forgot about
right.
it.
Yeah, we might get a call after this video's out.
Call us.
Call
Yes,
us.
I want to know too.
Any of it. I mean, it did sell 1 million copies 30 years ago, which is pretty astounding, or
Right.
27 years ago.
In the first year.
In the first year,
Yeah.
and its life was shortened for 2 reasons. One is it sold so well, I rushed Phantasmagoria 2 into development, and that kind of put a damper on
On the
Phantas
first
1.
one, right?
Plus, the company got bought around that time, and Davidson's sales force was freaked out by the idea of selling Leisure Suit Larry or
This M-rated
or
game.
King's Quest. I mean, for
Even
whatever
King's-
reason,
even
they
King's
were
Quest,
worried about
they didn't-
King's
they didn't
because it
like
had magic in it. Imagine how they felt about Phantasmagoria.
It had magic and
And
witches
so
and
suddenly you're
wizards.
counting on
Really?
the people
Yeah,
that
seriously.
sell
I'm
educational
serious.
products to push Phantasmagoria. And it was horrible because we had lots of inventory in the field. The sales force suddenly is talking to they didn't want to push it, and that started inventory coming back, and it was just a brutal time after the
It was.
acquisition. And Phantas was kind of
It was a victim of it.
yeah, it was one of the first victims of it. So we don't know how many copies it would have went on to sell had it not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was sort of killed, actually, by the people
It-
that bought
Yeah, it didn't
Sierra.
die. It was killed.
Yeah, it was killed.
So,
Well, speaking of product coming back, this is
Yeah.
something we were chatting about earlier. Sierra had this wonderful 30-day no questions asked return policy,
Which is unheard of.
Yeah.
Oh,
You know?
which
Yeah.
was fantastic. It
Yeah.
really helped us in tech support because if we couldn't get something fixed, that we could always fall back on that.
And then they do, I don't want to return it. You know,
Yeah.
no,
No, please don't
yeah,
return it.
yeah.
we really did everything we could to have a strong relationship between the company and the customer. And I just thought, if they weren't thrilled, I wanted the product back. And I didn't want it to go through retail because then retailers think of it as product people are bringing back. So I just always assumed that we'd get some percentage, 0.5% or something that would come back. And I'd be out, $40 a copy or something. And it was just part of our marketing.
Yeah.
We wanted people to love us. And, I thought of it as spend a lot of money, get them into the family. Once they're in the family, we'll do other products. If they know we'll take it back, if they don't like it, then they'll take a chance.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's something that, a company selling 1 or 2 products a year couldn't do. But for us who had, 30, 40, 50 new products coming every year, it was a great strategy because people felt identified with
Yeah.
Sierra.
Yes.
Speaking
I
of-
picked this game for a very specific reason. One, do you remember it?
I remember it.
Okay. And the reason why I picked this game is because this demonstrates just how varied and how many games came out at the time. And I was blown away by all of these, subsidiaries that we had, random games that would come out. So
And as you were saying, what game company puts out 30 games a year now?
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I mean, the
Yeah.
variety was out of control.
Where did this-
So this was
Oh, that's from
Cocktail
Cocktail
Vision.
Vision.
Cocktail Vision.
So,
Okay.
so talk
okay.
a little bit, I guess, about Cocktail Vision because
Yeah, well, Sierra. I mean, to a boring marketing perspective, Sierra was dominant in the U.S. in entertainment, and we were also getting dominant in education. We were doing very well with the Dr. Brain series.
We love those games. Yeah.
So we were doing good, but in Europe we only had games. Our educational product wasn't working, and these guys had a series of educational products in Europe that was kicking butt. And so I acquired them more for their education than their games, but they also were kind of wannabe adventure game and other kinds. And their adventure games weren't particularly great, but when I acquired the company, we kind of inherited them. And some of them were pretty decent. The Goblin series wasn't horrible.
I was going to say that there is definitely a fan base for the Goblin series.
Yeah, this one, and actually, the guy that wrote Goblins just wrote me a few days ago and is coming out with another Goblins game. And so he sent me a link to it, but I don't know if it's any good or not. But I remember good things about Goblins, and this particular game I don't remember good things about.
I don't either. But
it was, you kind of inherit it when you buy the company. It's got a good cover. That's all.
Yeah, they did a good job there.
I was going to either bring this or another game that they made called Urban Runner, I think, which is also like a full motion. It was kind of what you're describing. It's like a little bit too much full motion video, but again, just incredibly varied releases.
We were a game company that was a wannabe education company, and they were an educational company wanting to be entertainment.
I don't think that actually even has the Sierra logo on it, even though
it doesn't.
We
probably hid that.
Okay, well, we can't wait any longer. We're here with Ken and especially Roberta, so we got to do the King's Quest.
We have to. So I have King's Quest 5 here and King's Quest 7. Two very different King's Quest games.
Yes. Now, in what way do you consider them different? Just out of curiosity.
For me, this is a little bit of that kind of pixel art, old school graphic style, which is obviously people love that, and it still holds up today. Mm-hmm. King's Quest 7 was the almost like hand animated style of it. It was like, I remember at the time it was when it came out. Both of them are great games, and they're just very different. I mean, you could see you growing as, I think, a game designer for these. So,
well, and some of that was because we hired a guy named Bill Davis that came out of the animation industry, and he did awesome animation.
Well, actually, I think of this one, King's Quest 5, as a bit of a leap in our graphics from King's Quest 4.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think of King's Quest 4 as still a little bit more into the what you might call the old style pixelized graphics. But this definitely, King's Quest 7 definitely is even a bigger leap. And we really talked about Disney, having it be very Disney-like.
Right.
And following the Disney look and feel. And so we did. And the backgrounds were definitely hand-painted.
What I saw just from iteration to iteration was, as you're talking about the change in the graphic, like taking advantage.
Yeah.
Oh, always. I know. Before I would start a new King's Quest, and I think that other than Phantasmagoria, King's Quest was always for me, and for Ken and Sierra, for the company, was the product that we used to advance technology.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And before I would do another King's Quest, and I did 8 of them, I would always go to Ken. It was about every 2 years. I think it was like every other year would be a King's Quest. And I would always say to Ken, and that's when technology was advancing faster and faster.
Yeah.
It seems to me like not so much anymore. Not that it's not, but it doesn't
It's
seem to be
stabled out
as
for sure.
fast.
Stabled out.
You're right.
But it seemed like then about every 6 months to a year there would be a big advancement, and I would say to Ken, from a design standpoint, and I'm not a programmer, so I couldn't really say from a technology standpoint what I can do. So, but he's sort of I would say he's always been the chief technical engineer of Sierra. And I would go to him and I would say, okay, what am I going to be designing this game around, technology wise? What is it? What are the machines? What are the parameters?
New?
What's new? What are the parameters?
Right.
How far can I go? Because I would have ideas in my head, but I I wouldn't know how far I could push it.
Part of
But-
the story that people don't realize was that King's Quest, the way we thought of it internally, I had a engine group that was building the engine that all the games ran on. And so when Roberta did do King's Quest, her goal, well, working with
wanted
me,
to push-
we had tried to figure out, where is the industry going over the next couple of years, and how do we move our
We
engine
wanted to be ahead.
to support it? Yeah,
we would
want to be
try to be
ahead of
ahead
that.
everybody.
Sure.
And then the engine group would work with Roberta to create something that showed off the new technology. When you look at the games in a row, you don't really see as much the innovation that happened as when at the time each King's Quest set the bar for the next couple of years, and then the other teams, the Space Quest, the Leisure Suit
Yeah,
Larry,
they
the
would
Quest for
follow.
Glory,
Yeah.
they would use the engine that Roberta built, and then
Yeah.
she would start working on King for 2 years later.
Yeah.
So you're planning ahead. You're planning a game. It takes about a year to make,
Oh, sometimes more than that.
sometimes longer.
Yeah.
So you're kind of guessing where technology will be.
Yeah.
How often did you get that right, and how often did you say, okay, here's the game, we've built it, but the technology isn't here yet, so you have to change it or pull back? Or what would you do then? Would you change the game, or would you delay the release for the
No,
technology
I
to
don't
catch
think
up?
that ever really happened, did it? Where we missed the mark?
Yeah, I mean, first off, Sierra, one of our sayings was, leaders lead and followers follow. And the whole industry kind of started looking to us. I mean, it was the nice thing about being the 800-pound gorilla in the room, in that, people, so especially like with King's Quest VII on sound, I think that was the one where there was this weird time in the industry where nobody knew how they were going to do sound. There were starting to be sound cards, and Sierra really kind of pioneered those, working with Creative Labs and some other people in those days. But it was unclear at that time whether the future of music and sound was going to come from synthesizers and using waveforms or using MIDI.
Right.
I remember that we were having to deliver games with a MIDI interface so that people could attach external like keyboards and music devices, and we even sold the Roland MT32. You guys probably worked for us back when we were selling that.
Getting flashbacks.
Yeah.
And we really lost money on that stuff, but it was important to kind of drive the industry. So some of it wasn't, did you guess wrong? It was, we picked. I mean, we just, and customers would follow. I mean, it was astounding in that we would, when we released King's Quest VII, people rushed out and bought sound cards.
Yeah.
And we sold a heck of a lot of sound cards and MT32s. And I actually felt kind of bad because some of that gear was expensive. And people would rush out and buy it, and they would say, oops, we were wrong. The right answer is...
Where were we wrong?
Well, because the external, the MT32 and using MIDI out to a synthesizer device, the problem is you can't do sound effects.
Right.
So we needed
Audio.
something that would handle both
Yeah.
music, and so like those old MT32s that wouldn't do sound effects. And anybody that bought those, I apologize.
But if you have one now, it might be worth something.
If you have one now.
Yeah.
But we did have more music on
If you
our
attach a
games
rope, it'll
as
make a
result,
bowmaker.
though.
We both love racing and driving games, and this was kind of our first introduction.
IndyCar from Papyrus. So Papyrus, tell me about that subsidiary.
I wanted into the 3D sim category, and I was specifically looking for, what a great company, Papyrus. And I remember, when I went to visit them, what I was always looking for was designers that were passionate about something. And these guys, they put together a whole company that just lived and breathed racing. You went in and they had the simulators built that they'd built themselves with the pedals and the steering wheels. And it was this vertically focused group in Boston. And I was there like 5 seconds when I said, I got to buy these guys. And we bought them, and we, part of my strategy was to have small development groups in different places. And it was horribly inefficient as a company to have, an office in Boston and an office in Paris and an office in San Francisco and an office in Oregon. We had, I think, 13
Japan,
developments in Japan.
France,
I spent all my time riding on
Ireland,
airplanes.
England.
And probably part of why we ultimately sold Sierra is I was tired of riding on airplanes. And it's part of what brought down Sierra was that the new people didn't want to try to manage. The first thing they said is, "Oh, this company can be a lot more profitable if we consolidated all those developers in one room." But you go to the guys at Papyrus that live and breathe racing games and live in Boston and say, "Well, you got to move to Seattle." I mean, maybe you'll get a couple, but maybe not.
Right.
And then you put them in a room where this table's doing kids typing products and that table's doing racing games.
It doesn't work.
And it becomes this homogenized mess instead of a. But these guys were passionate about racing. They lived for it. They did an awesome job. Wonderful games. They got the NASCAR license.
Yeah.
We sold a ton of them. And how Sierra lost the NASCAR license and how they lost Papyrus is one of the great sad sins of all time.
It is a sin. It was just.
I mean, I don't know what happened. I wasn't there,
You weren't there.
but I never would have lost that license because it was just incredible. And these guys were the best in the world at doing it. So I see this, and it's
sad.
Sad.
It is sad.
The first thought that leaps to mind
It's
is
so sad.
what cool products they were, and I don't know what happened to the team or the guys.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
The one thing that we always heard in our department was people buying computers, top of the line,
Yes.
no expense spared,
Right.
just to play these games.
Yeah.
And they
Especially
would,
NASCAR.
Especially NASCAR, they would, because they would push them and they would get the steering wheels. And this is at a time when that was pretty unusual. And they lived, like the customers lived and breathed every single release at the time.
Yeah, we would get phone calls before the next NASCAR would come out.
Yeah.
They said, "What's the spec going to be?"
Yeah, just
And
tell-
it's like,
just tell
we
us what
don't
to buy.
know.
Yeah.
Even if
We'll
we,
buy the computer. I mean,
Isn't
that's
it amazing?
Yeah, it is.
Oh,
It's
we'll
sad.
work on
though.
this. We'll
So-
work on this computer. We'll work
What
on
a
that.
great product.
Yeah.
I mean, it's I don't know who's doing great race car games because there's other games, but they're kind of silly. I mean, this is the real thing.
Yeah.
I mean, this is as close as you can get.
Sure, let's move on to the other big gorilla in the room.
Oh yeah.
Half-Life.
Yay.
So I love
Yeah.
this because when people come to me and they're like, "Well, what did Sierra put out?" And I'll tell them the obvious ones, and they'll be like, "Oh, by the way, Sierra published the original Half-Life,
Yeah.
arguably one of the greatest first-person shooters ever made." People still
Yep.
say that today.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, it is.
So it must be with great pride that you were able to do, to actually put that out. I would think.
Yeah, I mean, some of the products I'm proudest of. Half-Life, I always had kind of this mixed thing in that I didn't really like the idea of teaching kids to have a gun and go wandering through a maze, shooting at people and blood spurting, and
Until Phantasmagoria.
well, even then, Phantasmagoria is not. Yeah, well, I mean, it's cartoon violence. It's not as. I guess these things are too. I don't know. Yeah,
I don't know.
Half-Life
is more
didn't-
of a
Phantas had a
horror
story.
movie. This is more
Yeah.
an action movie.
Yeah.
This is more action.
It's
This is
science
action.
fiction.
That's like
And
Doom. I always had kind of this love-hate relationship with him. I just putting a gun in a kid's hand and sending them around shooting at people. Especially, I mean, it's different than watching a movie where somebody else who's a bad guy is shooting.
Right.
Oh,
But
yeah.
putting a gun in your own hand and having you run through a maze and shoot seems like a horrible thing to do with a young kid, which is a dumb thing for me to do as a video game publisher because that's where the money's at. So when I almost acquired id, who made a product called Doom, and when that fell apart, then years later, Gabe Newell came to me and he was doing this game, Half-Life. And at the time, there really wasn't much to it. I mean, they really what they'd gotten was the license to use some game engine.
Yeah, I think it was
forget
the
what
Quake.
called.
It was-
Yeah, the Quake game
It's like
engine.
a heavily modified Quake.
And so what they did was not a whole lot of layering on top of the Quake engine, but these guys were smart. They were Microsoft guys, and they knew how to enhance the game engine.
Yeah.
And they had a vision for how to add a story to it.
I think
and
that's
make it
the thing.
interesting. Yeah, adding the story
It wasn't
to it.
just
Yeah.
necessarily running around. In
Right.
the beginning, the first 20 minutes is like you're on the tram going into Black Mesa.
Yeah.
It's introducing characters. That was stuff at the time was groundbreaking.
Yeah, that nobody had done.
Yeah,
It was.
With
they're
this genre.
They're taking their time. Yeah, with this genre, taking their time to kind of get you in the world a little bit.
Well, they were, at the time I thought it was going to be 90 days when we were going to have a game, and it wound up being a year and a half or 2 years, but it was worth it. What an incredible game. And once again, that's one where I don't know what happened after we sold the company, but somehow Sierra lost the rights to Half-Life and Valve went on to do their own thing.
Right.
And one of my rules was I wanted to own the intellectual property, because we normally would lose money on the first of a series and make it up on the sequels, because then you had a built-in audience. And so we owned at that time the name Half-Life, and yet somehow Valve got it back, and I don't know the
But
story.
it was after we were gone.
That was after we
Yeah.
were gone. But incredibly talented people, and I'm thrilled that they've gone on to such great success.
Right. Yeah.
So-
Yes. So I wanted this one because I am a huge fan of Dynamics. I think from my perspective, I loved everything
they were
they
good.
did.
They were great.
And this game in particular, I think, demonstrates just how varied they were. They made flight sims, they made puzzle games, and they made RPGs, they made adventure games, and so just kind of curious.
And educational products.
Oh yeah, I mean it's everything. right?
Everything.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems like they could do no wrong.
It seemed like they were a very dynamic company.
I know. So it's kind of curious, to, your thoughts about Dynamics. And
Yeah.
Oh man, you just
He
summed
loved
it up.
Dynamics.
I mean,
He
they
loved
were.
Dynamics. We
Oh
did too.
God,
I
what
did
a
too.
wonderful company.
Yeah.
They. Yeah, I mean, when I went down there to visit them the first time in Eugene, Oregon, and saw what were they doing? They had A10 and Red Baron.
Yeah,
Right.
you were interested in flight simulators.
I was
at the
interested in
time,
the flight sim
'cause you had
category.
tried to get the flight simulator from Microsoft.
Well, I did get the
Oh,
flight
Sublogic
simulator for
probably.
that's a whole story. But,
Oh, that's another story. Yeah.
They,
but he was interested in that for sure.
Yeah, no, they were originally acquired because of A10. No, it wasn't A10. It
The
was,
Aces series.
Aces Over the Pacific.
Aces Over the Pacific.
Yeah.
Yeah,
One of my
and the
favorite games of
beautiful
this.
Yeah,
manuals. I mean,
And
oh.
Red
huge
Baron.
Yeah.
That-
Yeah, Aces over Europe, Ace of the Pacific, and
Yeah.
you're right, like these huge folding manuals that basically taught you how to fly.
Yeah.
I talked to at one point after the deal was after the company actually recently, like in the last 2 years when I was writing my book, to a guy named Dave Grinowetsky, who came in to be president of Sierra after the acquisition, and he said that the instructions came down just in effect fatten the cow for sale. So he went down and just laid off people at all these divisions, at Dynamics, at Papyrus, at Brightstar, I mean, all these different divisions we had, and I just
Shut
can't
'em down.
imagine, just shut them down. Thinking,
And we
because-
had no idea when we sold that they did not tell us they were going to.
well, we thought it was going to be the opposite.
We
I mean,
thought
I
it was
went to
gonna be
all
the
the
opposite.
employees and honestly said, this is going to be the best thing ever. We're going to explode.
Yeah.
But the Dynamics guys,
They lied to us.
Like, if you think about it, I mean, the pinball games, the flight sims,
Yeah, that's right.
the
Yeah.
Incredible Machine series,
Yeah.
the
The
adventure,
Earthseed
even their
series was my
adventure
favorite.
games were
Oh yeah,
good.
tribes and all that stuff.
And they weren't a big team. They were, maybe they got up to like 80 or 90 people at the peak, but when we acquired them, they were only like 12 people. And Damon Sly and Jeff Tennell are just the most incredible people ever.
Yeah.
And Jeff's got this sense of polish and design
Yeah.
that just rippled through the products.
Was that our first acquisition? Was it
I think they were our first
I think-
acquisition, and then I discovered this is pretty cool. I can
Yeah.
acquire people with stock. You just kind of
Yeah.
run the printing press, and you get somebody else, and then you can grow really fast and
No, but
kind
we
of
liked
roll
them though.
together.
But I mean,
they were incredible.
you know, you don't just buy.
No,
I mean,
they
just
were
to,
what
you
they
know, bring
call
them in. you know,
accretive. They were good
They
people.
were very complimentary.
Well, and part of my job was to take technology they would build and move it over
Yeah.
to the other divisions, and even just doing cool looking score screens and title screens. They really
Yeah, they
led
were
the
very
company in that area just for polish.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
So,
Okay, there's the next two for you, buddy.
All right, I'm excited to ask you about these because you just didn't do King's Quest; you also branched out.
I did. I actually did over 20 games. I love the old style murder mystery, Sherlock Holmes,
Agatha Christie.
Yeah. That kind of genre. And so I thought I would make up a character from like the 1920s, the sort of the flapper era, who was kind of like a Nancy Drew. Because I always loved the Nancy Drew series when I was a little girl. I don't know that they're read anymore. But
I read them, so
Yeah, you okay?
Hardy
good.
Boys and Nancy
Hardy
Drew.
Boys
Good.
for me, yeah.
The Hardy Boys.
Yep.
I
You
read
know?
all the Hardy Boys.
Hardy
Yeah,
Boys,
yeah.
Nancy Drew. So so I thought it would be kind of fun to do a game, a story, based on that idea of a young woman, and she wants to be like a Nancy Drew character and get involved in a murder and solve it and all that, and use the Agatha Christie sort of idea. And so I came up with the Colonel's Bequest, and it's a Laura Bow mystery. And my idea had been to make it a series. So there would be a series, it would be the Laura Bow. This first one is the Colonel's Bequest, a Laura Bow mystery. And then the idea was that there would be different ones. Laura Bow, does this.
Right.
She goes down the Nile,
Yeah.
murder on the Nile, or
Yeah,
she
nice.
does, she goes on down. And that was the idea, and I loved working on this. It was so much fun, and it actually got reviewed very well. But it was one of the earlier games. It did pretty well, but I wanted to be the designer to go forward with it. So then maybe I could do a King's Quest and a Laura Bow mystery. King's Quest, Laura Bow mystery, but it never happened. But this did well enough. And it did bring in a lot of female players. I think it was one of the games that helped diversify computer gaming. And then, so this next one, Dagger of Amon-Ra, is also a Laura Bow mystery, but I didn't do it, and I hate to
You passed the baton to somebody else.
I hate to admit it.
Yeah.
I hate to admit it. Unfortunately, it doesn't even say
Who really
who
did
really
it.
did it.
Yeah.
And that's kind
So
of a
it's
shame.
Roberta Williams, Laura Bow. So they're saying
yeah,
yeah,
the
character.
And I
character.
remember arguing with our marketing department, with, looking at this box, and I said, I didn't really do this. And they said, but you thought up the Laura Bow character,
Right.
and the series, and I go, well, that's true. And they said, so we're really not lying when we say Roberta Williams, Laura Bow in the Dagger of Amon-Ra, and said, well, it's gonna sell so much better if we put your name on there. And so, but I remember going, oh, that I don't feel really good about that. And I will say who did it. It was Bruce Balfour. So if Bruce, you hear that, I'm giving you full credit.
Well done, Bruce.
Yeah,
Bruce.
really. Well, these games have their fans even today.
But this did really well. He did a good job.
Yeah, great covers too on both
Yeah,
of these.
yeah,
Fantastic, huh?
yeah.
So, what's a Sierra conversation without a little Larry?
Yes, and from my perspective, when people talk about Sierra, and they'll be like, "Oh, what'd they make? King's Quest, Leisure Suit Larry." You start with that.
Yeah.
And then, I remember that. That was the game that had the age check in the beginning that I didn't know the answers for.
Right.
And it's hilarious because it's you play it today, and I'm like, oh, was that Nixon or was that it's funny. It's like
Some of those questions, even I don't.
I know.
It was 90s kind
Yeah. So talking just a little bit about
Let you
Al
do this
Lowe.
one. Yeah.
Oh.
The great Al Lowe.
Yeah, the one and only Al Lowe.
Yes.
What a great guy, what a funny guy. I mean, just talking to Al, he'll make you smile. But
Yeah.
he originally the game was done as a text adventure by a guy named Chuck Benton. And it came to us, and we marketed it under the name Soft Porn.
Well, it was
with,
named to that. We didn't.
It was
name
named that already.
We didn't name it.
We
that.
didn't name it that.
It
Wouldn't
came
have
to us
picked that.
way.
And-
I wouldn't have.
But
we
it's
wouldn't have done
so
that.
like crazy.
Of
I mean,
course.
everybody wanted
Yeah.
it.
Of course.
And,
We can't find a copy now to save our lives.
I tried to find a copy.
Uh-huh.
I think there's one guy in Finland who has a copy. That's it.
Yeah.
Well, the original text
Yes.
game.
Text game.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd say, and Al copied it pretty close. I went to Al Lowe and I said, we're taking heat for this game, Soft Porn. I think, both Al, my brother, and me, all three claim credit for thinking of the name Leisure Suit Larry and the Land of the Lounge
I
Lizards.
think I remember though. Who,
Yeah.
It was Johnny.
You think it was Johnny?
His-
I think it was
his
Johnny.
brother John-
but
John
who knows?
Williams.
I don't want to say that because Al will yell
Well,
at me.
I'm sorry, but I think it was Johnny.
But Al built the game, and I remember he had to get permission because Al really, he was a school teacher. He's
Okay.
not he's not the kind of guy to be doing adult humor. And
You did a good job, though.
Yeah, it came naturally.
Yeah.
Let's put it that way.
He rose to
he
the,
learned. No
he
pun
rose to the
intended.
challenge.
No pun intended.
Well, he did.
Yeah.
But I remember at the time saying I might have to ask my pastor. I don't know if I can do this.
No, he did not.
He did too.
He
I think
did.
he did.
He really said that?
Huh.
Well, that's the legend story. Al can maybe tell us if it's
Al,
true.
did you?
But I think in the legend, his pastor response said, "Do I get a piece of the action?"
Oh, I think I remember that story now.
Wow.
I don't know
Well,
if
it may or may
but
not
you never
be true.
know with Al.
If it's
Sure,
not
sure.
true,
Maybe it
apologies,
shows.
Al.
It's
You
on
know.
the internet. It's true.
Everything
on the internet is true.
Yeah.
But and this is a pretty close remake with a little extra stuff in there. And it's so funny because every once in a while I'll see somebody wearing in the game, there's a scene in a bar where you go into the bathroom, and on the wall it says "Ken sent me," and that's a password. And I was so honored to see my name on the toilet wall. But still to this day, people are wearing T-shirts that say "Ken sent me," and weird
Yeah.
piece of history.
Yeah.
But well, it's a great game, and I'm the same way. When people ask me what I did, I'll say, well, Sierra, we made Half-Life, Leisure Suit Larry, and King's Quest. There was
Yeah.
a story
Yeah.
about our, we had an ad agency who was working on the game to promote it. And Roberta and I were at a Thai restaurant on Mercer Island, a place you probably are familiar with.
Yeah, I remember
And we heard people behind us talking. I mean, we didn't know they
It was
worked
a
for the
couple
ad
of
agency.
ladies.
A couple of ladies.
Couple of ladies.
And they were talking about why they were in Seattle to work on this porno game, and I kind of wondered what it was. And
Yeah,
they were
ears
talking
pricked
about
up.
how embarrassed they were to be working on it, and they wanted off the project. And we realized finally they were talking about Leisure Suit Larry, and both her and I were shocked. Like, this is not a bad game. I mean,
Right.
and Al's not got a sexist bone in his
No,
body.
he's not at
In fact,
all.
he's a puppy dog for Margaret, his wife.
Right.
And and so I went back to work and went marching into the marketing VP's office and said, "Fire that agency! We got to get rid of them right now."
What, and did they?
And they did.
They did.
Yeah, this lady
Yeah, you don't
lost
want
her
They
these-
job.
didn't get it.
No, you don't want these
Yeah.
ladies
Yeah, they shouldn't have
that
been
don't
eating-
even believe in the product.
No, you got to really get it.
Yeah.
And get
Yeah.
the humor.
Yeah.
And,
Well, it's all innuendo, and that's the fun of it.
Of course.
Yeah.
so the moral is eat Chinese food, not Thai food, because it can get you out of your job.
All right, guys. Well, this has been amazing. This has been so much fun.
Complete treat to talk to both of you and reminisce, and really for me and probably for Jason, we were on the tech support side, so
Yeah.
we saw all of this
Yeah.
after the game was out.
Yeah.
You two were the complete
You had
other
your own
side.
perspective, the opposite of us. We're the developers, and you're the one that's helping to bring it out.
Dealing with
In
our
the end.
problems.
Dealing with the problems.
We make a mistake.
Yeah.
Well, our mistakes are their job security.
That's
Look at it
true.
that way.
There it is.
That is
I think
true.
that's the quote.
That
but
is true.
but I've told this before, and it's so true that we look back on that era so fondly.
Very much so.
So
We
many,
do too.
so many great lifelong friends that we've made. It was just a wonderful time.
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
It
So
was for us too. It was an unbelievable time.
yeah, it really was. It was very.
It was, it was almost a little bit of an, I don't know if I want to use the word innocence, but it was early in this industry.
Yeah.
And not just did you make friends within the company, but we made friends within the industry of other, Broderbund, EA, they became friends of ours. And it was just so much more friendly.
Yeah.
and
We were the
innocent
same-
almost,
We were the same way, is that we would actually interact with Activision. We would reach out to EA and
Yeah.
do trades with games.
Yeah.
We'd be like,
Thrustmaster.
Yeah.
yeah, and again, it was innocent time. Also, too, I tell people it's like
that.
we were in tech support, but we did so many other things. You wrote for Interaction Magazine.
Right.
We were in video games. People grab us to go out to Eastern Washington to shoot video for Shivers 2 or for you or Phantaz 2.
Yeah, great news, Ken. They saved money on Actor by grabbing tech support.
It's true. But it was just a really
It
wonderful time, and so this has been so much fun sitting down with you guys.
Oh, thank you. Well, we're having fun. I mean, reminiscing.
Yeah,
Going
yeah,
back.
yeah.
I mean,
Holding the
'cause-
when was the last
and
time you
just-
held some of these games in your hand?
Ooh.
You
were in high school.
No, I mean it's.
It has been 27 years since we held one
We
of those
we
boxes
don't
in hand.
even we don't even have the boxes of our own game. I mean, we have some.
Yeah.
I have above my desk in Seattle. I have maybe 10 of my games, the original boxes. But that's it.
Well, you guys were living on a
That's
boat for.
No,
Yeah,
I don't know.
a lot
I
of the
think
time.
I think that some of our stuff got put into storage and Sierra things and stuff, and then we finally donated it to
A museum.
it was called the Strong.
Oh,
Oh,
okay.
yeah. They
And-
have,
and-
well, we had a whole locker. I mean, a big
Oh, we had
storage unit.
Tons of
And
things.
so I just went in there with big boxes and just packed it
and
with
a lot
all
of
the
my
old
old
memorabilia and
and
sent
my
it
old
to them.
design documents, and
Well,
and they
uh,
have.
I
all
always
this
looked
stuff.
at it that eBay was our storage because I figured I could always go to eBay and buy any of the old games that I wanted, but something weird happened. For some reason, the prices went bonkers.
People got
And suddenly
nostalgic.
you're going there, you're seeing an old game, and whereas I thought, oh yeah, maybe I could pick it up for $19, and you'll see $1,200, $1,500,
Yes,
yeah.
$2,500.
I
And you
saw a
think,
copy of Time Zone in a Japanese retro store, and it was a good deal, I think, for $1,000.
ah,
Yeah, I have that one. I
Do you?
I do have that one.
Oh.
I have
Yeah.
that.
Well, I didn't pick it up.
I didn't know. I didn't know I could sell it.
My goodness, what's over there?
Yeah, I know.
$1,000.
yeah, my whole philosophy of eBay is my storage
Yeah,
unit.
sure.
That doesn't work anymore.
Right.
Different world.
Yeah.
Well, again,
Oh, well.
thank you guys so very much.
Thank
Well,
you.
thank
so
you.
very much.
Thank you for coming and
A lot of
joining
fun.
us.
Yeah.
Yes, and inviting us.
And thanks for watching. All right.
Bye.
Cheers.
Thank
Cheers.
you.